4, 3, 2. Hey everybody, Josh Schertz in a World Alternative Media here, and I am joined by Tim Picciott of the Liberty Advisor once again. A few other friends of ours might be joining us later on in the show. There's lots to talk about. Hit the like button below. Check the links below. We've got a lot to go into today, as we have been kind of at it nonstop with the insanity in the news over the last couple months now. It's just, it doesn't even seem like reality still after months of watching the markets tank, after months of watching government just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they're forcing people into homes. We're going to go into propaganda. We're going to talk about who benefits. We're going to talk about the housing markets, the stock market, the economy, all the insanity that is blindsiding us right now, as well as complete totalitarian governments around the world. Starting off with the Twitter post that Tim will bring up on the screen right now from Luke Rudowski of We Are Change, as he shows the Empire State Building flashing like
you do a much better job pronouncing my last name than Luke does. So I will. So
yeah. Well, of course, I put work into my job. Anyway, so the Empire State Building today looks like the Eye of Sauron, essentially. And there is a lot of fear mongering going around, folks. There's a lot of propaganda that we're going to get into later on in the video. But jumping to the next link here, we got stocks could get a buying boost on Tuesday from a Wall Street technical phenomenon. And this was published at 7:19 a.m. today, Tuesday. It's funny because it didn't work out all that well. If we jump to the next article, literally a couple hours later from CNBC, as it says, stocks extend losses in final hour of trading. Dow falls 400 points to end worst ever first quarter. Well, I don't think anyone's surprised by that. And we're going to dig deeper into the Dow, which of course today, today the Dow has fallen 410 points. Yeah, 410.32 points, 1.84%. Not the biggest fall we've seen lately. It's down to 21,917. But nonetheless, going from about 29,600 and something down to around 17,000 something, bouncing back up to like 23 something, down to 21. And it doesn't look like it's going to be improving anytime soon, because there's more news coming out very shortly about how bad this coronavirus, quarantining is going to affect markets, store closures, all stuff we're going to get into later on. But first, I want to go to Tim because he has some information on pensions that relates to these last couple stories that we brought up on the screen. Tim, could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So one of the things, you know what, and okay, all right, cool. We're back to me. Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to point out is that, so pension funds, and actually, it's not just pension funds, there's other funds that have this as well. Certain mutual funds, they have certain mandates where they need to keep a certain percentage of their allocation to stocks. So I'm just going to throw out a number. Probably 60% stock, 40% bonds is probably pretty typical. If you're 55 to 65 years old, that's probably what you have. Maybe not if you're one of our listeners, but just a typical 55 to 65-year-old, that's what they have. Typical pension fund, that's what they have. Mm-hmm. Now, what's going on is there's 60% that were in stocks because stocks have gotten pummeled. Now it might only be 45%. I'm just throwing that out as a random number. So if you have 45% and your mandate says that you have to have 60%, well, then what happens, it means that you need to buy that extra, 15% to get back up to what your mandate has. And so because of that, we're seeing, a gigantic influx of money that's coming in, not because necessarily it's a great time to buy or buy the dip, as, so many people are saying, but because they were mandated to buy as much as $850 billion for the past quarter, as the Zero Hedge article goes on to say. So that is creating forced buying. However, they didn't all have to go out and do it today. So, with the article that you were pointing out to the first time, I mean, obviously that did not, age very well. They wrote it at 7:19 this morning.
Yeah, in a few hours. You got to love how mainstream media tries to prop up the markets like the Fed. It fails every time.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't. Yeah, it barely even lasted. By the time we even got to it, it was already outdated. But that is a big. But don't underestimate the fact that there is going to be a big boost in stock purchases. Which now if you're riding, if you've been riding out this market, or your advisor told you to just sit tight, buy the dip or just buy and hold, and just we just need to ride things out. Well, now could be potentially not financial advice, but I am a financial advisor, that, there are some people who are moving money over now that were using this, this high right now to then, liquidate, depending on their, tax situations and lots of different factors that, that would play into this recommendation and what they're currently invested in, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, we had recommended some of those people sold out at what we perceive as a higher level, and then that way we can get them better invested into other strategies. And so if you guys do, go onto the website, the phone that rings is the one that's right next to me, and that's not gonna be the case forever because we are getting really busy. But yeah, that forced buying from the pensions was a major factor. The fact that everyone's getting their $1,200 soon, families are getting $3,000. However, terrible deal. I mean, we had to get saddled with $60,000 of debt for every family of four to get 3,000. So, I mean, yeah, I am a financial advisor, but it doesn't take a financial advisor to figure out that is obviously some bad math there, Josh. Yeah, and Josh, are you with us right now?
There we go. Yeah, sorry. My mute button is a little off and on my old Yeti mic here. But anyway, so, and I am coming to you from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico right now, where there is nothing but loud traffic outside. So I have to mute it or else it's going to bounce back to me automatically. Anyway, and for those that are just tuning in, hit that like button. We're going to jump into a bunch more news here right away. I'm going to jump into the next article, which I think is more or less the headline of our video here today, out of CCN, which there it is. There's just a skull out of CCN here on this article. It says, did the Fed just accidentally trigger a housing market crash? And as the article goes into, by flooding the market with money, the Federal Reserve just accidentally pushed mortgage bankers to the brink of bankruptcy. And as it continues below the bullet points, the Federal Reserve unloaded its bazooka of stimulus all over the market in the last 2 weeks. It's not the greatest way to put it, but
no.
Okay.
Where's John with his money gun too? Which actually we ordered. I actually I know Luke and I and John, we ordered additional money guns. So I ordered one that's actually a Trump "Keep America Great Again" with Trump dollar bills that flow out of it. So I just had to do that. So
Ben Bernanke throwing toilet paper out of a helicopter. As the article continues here, but there's some major collateral damage. By flooding the markets with money, they may have accidentally triggered a housing market crash. May have, really? The Mortgage Bankers Association, MBA, warned of a large-scale disruption to the housing market and accused the Fed of using a sledgehammer. And as it continues below, how the Federal Reserve almost broke the housing market. Here's how it works. Mortgage bankers hedge themselves against interest rates going up. If rates go up, the hedge makes sure they don't lose money from customers who locked in a lower mortgage rate. It's a standard practice across the industry and almost never causes any problems until now. As part of the coronavirus stimulus action, the Fed bought $250 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities in a space of 2 weeks. For perspective, that dwarfs the amount they bought during the housing crisis by $80 billion, guys. Continuing on, it says, now mortgage bankers face bankruptcy. By flooding the market with money, the Fed forced down rates. Problem is, that just blew up the hedge. Mortgage bankers are now getting margin calls and need to pay tens of millions of dollars to meet them. Even well-capitalized lenders are on the brink of going under because of it. In a letter to regulators, the MBA wrote, margin calls on mortgage lenders reached staggering and unprecedented levels by the end of the week. For a significant number of lenders, many of which are well capitalized, these margin calls are eroding their working capital and threatening their ability to continue to operate. And as it continues below, housing market on the brink. This isn't the only seismic shock to the housing market since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Home buying demand has all but evaporated in the last month. Year-on-year growth in the housing market slumped from 27% in January and February to 1% in March. Zillow, a company that buys property to resell, has suspended all purchases. Meanwhile, a record 3.3 million people registered unemployed last week. Oh man, even with the government's promised.
And then Mnuchin, the best part about that is Mnuchin then said it doesn't matter. Like, oh, these unemployment numbers are irrelevant. But I sort of want to back up and talk about what blowing up that hedge means. So there is in financial planning a theory, not a theory. It's just it's called interest rate risk, and so it works a lot like a teeter-totter. So when the rates go up, the underlying values of the bonds go down, and so it works in reverse too. So when the rates go down, the underlying value of the bonds end up going up. Now it's a little bit different what's going on with the mortgage bankers because they were hedging themselves in different ways, but this is very important for the average person that's out there, especially if they're close to retirement. So if you're going into bonds right now, you have basically you've got to have full faith and credit in the fact that the Fed's going to keep on buying everything and keep on distorting the market, which they're probably going to do. But it also means you're going to get paid next to nothing, because if they end up losing control for even, and eventually they're going to lose control. They've already lost control, and that's why they have to go print, do this whole $6 trillion round of stimulus, is because they've already lost control. Now, what is going to happen is if you have $1 million in a 10-year duration bond and rates go up 1%, so they go from 0 to 1, well, now your $1 million is now 900,000. Rates go up 2%. Now your $1 million is now 780,000. You'll still get your piddly amount in interest. And so one of the sayings that I've heard is trying to pick up pennies in front of steamrollers. And the Federal Reserve itself, by now sitting on approaching $6 trillion of assets, just up from, they were, not even too long ago at like 3.7, I say just at 3.7, but now that they're approaching 6, what that means is that any movement of interest rates going up would then technically have just massive losses at the Fed. Those losses would then flow into the Treasury, where instead of the Fed, so what people don't realize, and you can find this on the Fed's website, they give back 94% of the profit, aka they take a 6% cut off the top, but they spin it as we give back 94% of the profit.
Right.
And what is going on with this is essentially now they might not have any profit, and based on how things are going, especially when you read statements like, oh, Donald Trump is nationalizing the Fed, and the Treasury just took over the Fed, and QAnon's gonna, we've got these medical tankers off.
Which, by the way, a ton of financial YouTube channels have been somewhat irresponsible with towing that story, and a lot of people are buying it up and staying apathetic because of it, thinking that someone's going to provide them some kind of cushion to this insanity instead of taking charge themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason I bring it up, is because I've had a ton of people, even people I respect greatly, who have posed that question to me. And I guess I don't have that article up on screen, maybe I'll go, if I'll go riff on something else and we'll go back to one of those articles and address that issue. But getting back to the interest rate risk, people are just taking on massive, they're in bonds for stability. They're in there so they can get predictable income. Right now, the income you get is very predictable, like almost next to nothing. It's not stable at all. We saw that there was a 1 in a billion year event that happened the other day with an 8 standard deviation event where the rates just absolutely got, where a balanced portfolio lost 15% in the course of just, a week or two, which is, that's a once in a billion year type event. And so we had people like Tom Hegna. It was one of the first interviews I ever gave, which when I talked way too much, sort of like I'm doing right now. But anyways, in that interview, we called it "Why Rates Are Staying Low Forever," and we talked about alternatives to bonds. And people are like, "Oh, guys don't know anything. Rates aren't staying low." And then, fast forward 6 months, and John and I have a video talking about having negative rates, and it's, "Oh, we're never going to have negative rates," and just like last week that the 3-month Treasury actually happened to be negative. Now that wasn't the Fed setting it negative, but the bigger issue is that there is always unintended consequences, and by trying to keep rates low, that is going to help out the people who are in debt, but then it also is not going to help out the same pension funds who were forced to buy in stock, who then are then going to get shellacked when they go and get when those prices go down again, Josh.
Well, keep in mind, I interviewed Stephen Moore, who was the head contender for chairman of the Fed, by the way, and is one of the top advisors to Donald Trump back in July, who said the jobs numbers were great, the stock market will go up for years, all is good. And I'm like, what about the labor force participation rate, and what about negative interest rates that are obviously coming up on the horizon soon, which we've been warning about for years, propping up interest rates. They end up dropping them out. We see them go negative, and in a crisis, it's a bloodbath kind of situation. But he said, oh, that's never going to happen. And then we fast forward to just last December, and Mnuchin and obviously Powell and many people within the financial sector were like, oh, we won't even see interest rates go down at all. They won't move in 2020. That didn't last very long. And obviously, the coronavirus isn't the cause. It's a catalyst. It's a catalyst that knocked the dominoes overall. And we're going to go deeper into the housing market before we go into any other subjects here. I do want to mention a super chat that I got from Safu Mafu, who sent $5 in the super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support, guys. That goes a long way here. That's literally like a day's worth of food here in Mexico. So thank you very much. As they say, will the housing market go down? Is it good to refinance? Now, I've heard a lot of people ask this question. Will it go down? Well, I think it's a hyper-localized issue, but we are watching massive central planning play into the housing markets. You look at places like Vancouver, Canada, where you literally have a system built up on government and central planning and manipulation of the economy, making it look as though that it's growing when they're just working with debt, creating a massive bubble. They have way too many, homes to not enough people. The prices are skyrocketing. You end up with, you know, a $5 million condo that you could get elsewhere for like, you know, $100,000. And you look in California, you look at Seattle, you look at New York, you look at Dallas, all over the United States, all over Europe, all over everywhere in the world where you see this exact same thing play out, the ghost cities in China, etc. And you're going to end up with it eventually coming down. What goes up must come down, and you cannot prop up that housing bubble forever. It's just not possible. It's amazing it's been prolonged as long as it has in places like Toronto. It's absolutely stunning to me. And right now, we have that coming up. We have this article coming out. We'll go into that in a bit, Tim. But for now, I do believe that with things like Airbnb is a huge factor. Keep in mind that there's countless people out there that have 20, 40, 60 properties that they've got mortgages on and are depending on Airbnb to pay for all this stuff. Airbnb is being shut down across the world right now. No money coming in. No amount of printing is going to fix this problem, folks. And you're going to end up with a massive bubble bursting out of Airbnb alone, not to mention the subprime lending, the mortgage-backed securities, you know, the collateralized debt obligations and all that kind of craziness that we've been watching for years. And the amount of money being pumped right now is worse than 2008. Tim, I wanted to hear your thoughts, I guess, on the idea of people asking, is it good to refinance?
You know, obviously, you know, everyone's gonna have their own circumstances, but you know, as a blanket statement right now, you know, yeah, I mean, the rates are very low right now. So relatively speaking, now probably would be a good time to refinance, but it really depends on what your goals are. I mean, if it's, you know, hey, I want to go refinance and I want to go take all my money out to go buy Ripple or something, I would say no. But you know, if you're going to go refinance because now you can get a much better rate, and also pay attention to what the APR is. So there's usually, you know, like a headline number of what your rate is, and there's another number that's usually higher. I don't know why I just motioned the hand lower. And so you gotta take into account like all these different factors and see what the rates are, because there's a lot of sleazebag tactics that people have. But you know, in terms of myself, I think it's a terrible time to buy a house. It's a complicated situation over here, but I was building a home and had to actually retract that, and I am now no longer building a home. And I see Josh sort of laughing over there in the background a little bit because he knows some of the background on that one. But no, I do not think it's a good time to go buy a home. You know, I mean, we are nowhere near the pain threshold. However, I could be wrong, because the Fed can come in and maybe they start buying up all the mortgages and they start buying up everything, and then the dollar becomes worthless and it just goes up and all the home prices go up to infinity because we're in a complete banana republic. So,
well, I do want to, Tim, I just want to bounce back to that CCN article and just finish reading some of it, because I think there's some good stats and good points mentioned in that article that I want people to check out as I was kind of going into. Meanwhile, a record 3.3 million people registered unemployed last week, even with the government's promised $1,200 check. Oh man, most of the money just going to the JFK Center, which then immediately withdrew their funds to artists. But anyway, even with the government's promised $1,200 check, many households won't be able to pay the mortgage. A tsunami of delinquencies is coming. And just look at this chart, which tracks Canadian commercial real estate. The price collapsed over fears of widespread defaults. And that is not something you want to see if you're invested in anything. Oh man, but carrying on, it says the Airbnb bubble just popped, and this is what I wanted to kind of go into a little bit, because I'm in an Airbnb right now. They literally went from $1,400 a month for this place to $300 a month for this place, because they're desperate for people. In Oaxaca, Mexico, they are kicking people out of Airbnbs and banning any travel accommodations. But as this article says, the housing market is also buckling under the massive unwind of Airbnb rentals. With travel effectively ground to a halt, Airbnb properties are empty. Anecdotal reports suggest this is a bubble waiting to pop. Well, I think it already is. One reveals, my neighbor is an Airbnb superhost. She is on forums with other hosts. Many of them have 10 plus mortgages. 0 guests are booking their properties. They are running out of cash. Sounds like a bank. And many Airbnb hosts are operating flimsy empires leveraged up to the eyeballs on cheap mortgages. If the coronavirus pandemic drags on, many thousands will default. we're already seeing the effects spill out on the housing market with no short-term bookings. Airbnb hosts are flooding the regular rental market. London just saw a 45% rise in rentals hit the market. It's 64% in Dublin and 78% in the British tourist town of Bath. The housing market is under pressure from almost every angle, and the cracks are starting to show. Let's hope this isn't 2008 all over again. No, it isn't 2008 all over again. This is worse than 2008 in my opinion. And I've been calling the housing market crash for a long time because it's built on unsustainable foundations that simply cannot hold the weight of what is being built above it. I went to school for architecture and engineering, and it's one of the first things you learn is how you build something and distribute weight. And when you don't distribute weight, everything comes crumbling down. You can make it look shiny, nice, beautiful, painted, and make it look glorious. But at the end of the day, it'll all come collapsing down on top of you if you don't find a way to change the ugly part of the inside of the walls, the weight distribution, the weight load. Tim, I wanted, before we get into any other articles here, ask you, as the super chat had previously mentioned, will the housing market go down? How much longer can this possibly sustain itself without, I mean, I know it's a hyper localized issue in most places, but like say, California, where everyone's leaving to begin with, the markets have been destroyed by this recent tremor. Just unbelievable. It's not, like nothing before in history. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I thought everything was going to be going down about 2 years ago. So July of, I was getting my years confused now. So I guess July of, was it 2018? I sold my house. So maybe August 2018. And I bought it almost at the exact market low in Arizona, sold it, but I thought would proceed to be the high. However, it looks like I jumped the gun about a year and a half too early. So I am renting right now, except lo and behold, my landlord now just sent us a letter and be like, oh, actually, you can't renew your lease for another year. We're selling your home. Now they're probably selling their home, which is funny because, they're talking to me like, oh, as a homeowner, you need to know this and this and that. And you're just a renter. I'm like, well, actually, I'm strategically renting, which sort of sucks now because now I need to find a new living arrangement because I was hoping to just ride out whatever was going to happen and then be able to swoop in and rinse and repeat what I did in 2012. However, take a look at what happened in Arizona. And I was living in New York at the time. Now I'm in Arizona. I want to say the housing here started going down in 2006 and fully didn't bottom out until about May or June of 2012, right when I bought my other house. So, I mean, it could take a long time. And then if you have to then spend, $20,000 a year to go rent or something, then, all the money you're spending renting could then be what you would have lost if you had a home. So we see the speed at how quickly this is devolving. And it seems like this is evolving a lot quicker. You brought up a great point about hyper localization. Being in Arizona, we get a lot of the Californians and the Californians who've already messed everything up over there. And then, but not,
they want to bring their problems over there to reap more problems.
And obviously not everybody, because I'm from New York. And so I would, rag on New Yorkers just as much.
New York?
Even though I came from New York. Which means I'm allowed to make fun of Cuomo because I'm an Italian New Yorker. And there's nothing.
We'll get into that later. We'll get into Cuomo, multiple Cuomos. We'll get into more than one Cuomo, I assure you, in this video. And we do have a friend of ours coming on the line shortly. So we should be seeing Kingsley Edwards tuning in, coming on our stream shortly, obviously the CEO of float.app. If you're just joining us, make sure to hit the like button and share this video on social media, and also check the links below. Join our new newsletter at www.imband.com. imband.com. You can put your email in that and on that website, and it'll allow us to reach you because we are banned. Also, make sure to check out Tim Picciott's website, thelibertyadvisor.com. If you want to become a client, it's definitely, I believe, well, the time to do it was a couple months ago, but I still think this is a very good time to do it because we're up against a rock and a hard place, and who knows what the F is going to happen next. I want to do a big shout out to Chester Wolf the Griffin, who just sent $5 in the super chat. Thank you so much, Chester. Chester Wolf, the Griffin. That's an interesting name there. I appreciate the super chats a lot, guys. Makes a big difference here at WAM. He says Federal Reserve is hyperventilating bubble. When the bubble pops, it'll be heard clear across the universe. People on other planets will be deafened. That is a good way to put it, man. I think that we are witnessing something that you cannot compare it to anything else in history. Is this 2008 all over again? Is this 1929 all over again? The answer is, to me, no. It's a totally different thing that we'll be comparing everything else to.
1984. It's 1984. It's just a little bit too late.
Yeah, seriously, it is. And I want to get into the next article. Make sure to hit that like button, guys. And the next article is called The Economic Depression of 2020. And this is something that everyone needs to kind of comprehend for a moment here. It says the economic depression of 2020, many of the restaurants, bars, and retailers that have closed will never reopen. We cannot expect, folks, for this to just repair itself, for all that money wiped out. Tourism, food, production, everything's going to shrink real fast here. And honestly, there's a lot of monopolies that are going to rise up. I'm seeing that here in Mexico too. All these businesses get shut down by the government, but Starbucks and Burger King and Subway are allowed to stay open. It's that kind of world we're living in. But going into the article, it says, it appears that we are heading into the worst economic downturn of the post-World War II era. And that is going to be true no matter how this corona pandemic ultimately plays out. And that's true. I mean, honestly, the coronavirus could literally just dip out and go away in like a month or two. I don't think it will, but it could. And that won't change the economic impact that we are facing. Carrying on with the article, it says, there are some that believe that this virus will only kill thousands, and there are others that are warning that it could kill millions. But everyone can agree that this outbreak is causing an unprecedented amount of fear. And even once a pandemic starts to fade, a certain percentage of the population will continue to be afraid to go to restaurants, bars, and other small businesses that are open to the public. Of course, many restaurant, bars, and small businesses were just barely scraping by during the good times, and so many of them will simply not be able to survive if a substantial portion of the population is literally petrified to step through their doors for the foreseeable future. Absolutely. And this idea of rent, forgiveness, it's absurd. How much money is going to have to be printed? You can't take taxes. No one has any money. Everyone's stuck in their homes. They're homeless with homes because they're going to be taking care of rent because they can't pay the rent. Landlords are screwed. Mortgages are screwed. I mean, it's just, there's no good way of putting this. For those that have prepared, good for you. But my God, like I'm very lucky because I might be broke, but I get to work on a computer. Most people can't go to their jobs. Most people cannot go to work. We are in a beautifully perfect situation compared to 99% of the world right now. Even with no money myself, I think I'm in a much better situation than most people because I'm just looking at people's jobs get wiped out. They don't know what to do. They're living paycheck to paycheck. The government takes over their property, their private property, like a communist empire, and then says, we'll pay for everything for you. With what? Then inflation hits. I mean, what do you think, Tim?
And the government that has the power to give you everything also has the power to take it all away. I mean, I forgot who said that, whether it was Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, one of those.
Thomas Jefferson, yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think it's very important to keep that in mind because that's exactly where we're going. We always want, if there's just this one, big daddy government that can just take care of everything. If there's this one, Superman or Iron Man that's just going to go come in, swoop in, save the day, and we need more centralized control of everything when it's, the centralized control of everything that's got us to where we are. Centralized control of CDC telling people, just keep 3 days worth of food in your house. And then when there actually is some sort of pandemic, everybody who, has 1 to 3 days of food and the grocery stores only have, 2 to 3 days of food. And then all of a sudden everyone's hoarding everything. And so, it's almost like people need to be more like the Mormons or something and be able to get more sustainable communities. I'm not Mormon. I had people ask me that. I'm not Jewish either. I had people ask me that too. But yeah, so if people were able to be prepared and maybe have their own gardens, have their own communities, know their neighbors, and that's what you always end almost every video in, food, water, shelter, being the toughest guy on the block, knowing your neighbors. I mean, that's something you end just about every single show that you do in. And we are lucky. I've been running a practice almost entirely off of Zoom going back to 2015. So, if you're, 55 to 65 and you don't feel that your financial planner knows what's going on, we're open for business. I'm taking calls. I've got another call coming up here in about an hour and a half. And so, had some more this morning, have some more tomorrow. So you guys can go to that website, book with me directly from there, and we can help put you on a better path. And, throughout all
absolutely there's more solutions than there are problems, but the problem is I've been trying to tell people the solutions for years and we're running out of the solutions when we're already in a situation where there's literally no way for us to go and buy a lot of food and prepare for a lot of things.
Kingsley.
So we have Kingsley Edwards, CEO of Float, joining us, buttoning up his shirt. Thank you for that, Kingsley. If you can turn on your audio.
There we go. Can you hear me?
There we go. How's it going, man?
I figured I'd put on the plaid to
No, so
I think that's like the uniform of the day for Wham every day.
That is, yeah. Well, or you can self-promote with the Liberty Advisor.
I can give you. I can mail you a Liberty Advisor shirt.
I was gonna get a tattoo just across my chest.
Okay, got that too.
No. You got to get a face tattoo. It's 2020, man. That's a way of the future. Face tattoos, Liberty Advisor.
Only if I get the referral or affiliate money coming in.
Yeah, seriously. Well, one more. Let's see. Yeah, one more thing that I wanted to do, talking about the economy that I want to bring up from Zero Hedge right now. And if everyone watching hits that like button, I really appreciate that. As it says, we're not making any April payments. Unprecedented clash erupts between tenants and landlords. So what we're witnessing right now is a situation where, again, the Fed is going to print a bunch of money and pump. I guess the government's going to pump this money into.
It would have been funnier if they would have been like, no, we're gonna pay you all of your payments. April Fools. Psych.
Yeah, seriously, on April 1st. I know it's perfect, right? It makes me feel like there's something more to this, but seriously, they are going to deal with a bunch of people who aren't working, that are stuck in their homes, that can't pay the rent, and then the people who have the mortgages that are renting the house to these people that can't afford to pay for the mortgage, and then you have a housing bubble. I mean, what a freaking mess! I never would have thought it could have been as crazy as this. I mean, I always said that this would happen, but the combination of every factor playing in is absolutely astonishing right now. And anyway, that leads me into the catalyst, all that's going on right now in the markets, which is on the next article. If you could pull that up, Tim. And
wait, so did I miss? Do we have to pay our rent for next month, or?
You can't get evicted, but the problem is you will eventually have to pay it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a huge deficit of who knows how much. In Canada, they're just going to pay for all of it. In the US, you're going to have to pay eventually for it. And then you're going to have to pay like 5 months rent.
Can't you just sign the back of your checks like Federal Reserve or something like that, or Trump?
You'd think, money does grow on trees
or
now.
India,
literally.
or India, what they're doing is they're allowing people to not pay their credit cards for 3 months, but all the interest piles up for 3 months.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. They're still charging people interest on their credit cards with all that?
It's only 25%, so don't worry about it. So
only 25. That's better than my 29%. Anyway, I want to move on to this next article that I'm not supposed to laugh about, and I am totally not happy about at all. As the Zero Hedge article says, CNN's Chris Cuomo diagnosed with coronavirus. So look, I'm not one of those people that says that coronavirus isn't a thing. People have coronavirus. It's a terrible thing. It's killing a lot of people. I believe it was bioengineered. It's being spread on purpose, all of that. But when I see these people in the media that are, by the way, telling everyone to stay in their homes and be responsible, and they're stuck in their homes themselves, apparently doing their newscast from their home, and they're not coming in contact with anyone for like 15 days, how the hell is Chris Cuomo getting coronavirus in his home? Is it like, it just looks like propaganda to me. This just looks like mainstream media going, look, everyone be more scared, toe the line more. CNN reporters are getting coronavirus.
Oh, is he still hitting the gym every day?
I don't know. What would Fredo?
That was De Blasio, I think, or maybe Don Lemon was going to come over to go visit him. So we'll see if Don Lemon gets it next.
Don Lemon's workout routine is beating up other men that don't want to sleep with him. Anyway, so I want to get further into this because I don't find it funny that he has coronavirus. I don't think it's funny for anyone to get it. But does he actually have it? I don't know. I'm sorry. I have a hard time believing this story at all because he's literally the head propagandist for coronavirus. He's telling everyone to stay in his home. He's been in his home for like 15 days and hasn't left. How is he getting coronavirus in his home? I mean, this seems like
maybe he got it from Trudeau. Maybe he got it from Trudeau's wife. Who knows?
Have you guys noticed a bunch of like celebrities that are getting it, or they get like information from a friend of a friend, and then they release like a video of like all these. It looks like mass fatalities and stuff like this happening in New York and other places, but you're not seeing that information anywhere else. So I don't know. It just
right. I mean, there's a weird issue where in New York you have them making a makeshift graveyard and a makeshift hospital in Central Park. And then you actually look on the ground and there's almost nobody in the actual hospitals. It's like empty. But then I'm hearing from other people it's crowded. I don't know what to believe. I stopped believing any side of that. I just know
Luke is trying to say it's not crowded because anyone doing like general stuff or stuff that's not as important, they're all just staying home, and that's why the hospitals aren't crowded. So I mean that's the other side of
Let me say that my mom works at a hospital and that is not true. Sorry, Luke. But look,
What did
Go ahead, Kingsley.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what did your mom say? Because I just heard from a nurse here in Nevada that it wasn't very filled up at all, but they're expecting the surge to happen on April 15th. I guess they're looking at the chart.
I thought there was gonna be some sort of your mom joke in there somewhere. But.
Oh, it'll come.
Oh, hey. So look, here's the issue. It's difficult to say because everyone is going to the hospital if they catch a sniffle because the news tells them to be scared. The coronavirus is a terrible thing. A lot of people are getting it, but a lot of people who don't have it are going to the hospital, and that's filling up some hospitals. It's been pretty bad in Winnipeg, Canada.
Unless I'm gonna die or I just like broke my arm or something, like I'm not going to the hospital.
Seriously, the only reasons I ever go to the hospital are when I have like pneumonia, like a lung infection, and I could die from it in my sleep, and I'm like, I should probably go to the hospital.
What about to die? I'd be like, I need to walk it off. Let's see.
That's how me and you are, Tim. Josh is not like that. He goes for the sniffles. But anyway, in Mexico, have you heard anything from there?
Yeah. So the hospitals are basically mostly empty here. There's almost nobody in the hospitals here. Also, like no one in this whole province of Jalisco, where I'm in Puerto Vallarta, almost no one has actually gotten coronavirus. There's some people who are around, people infected on a cruise ship that I can literally see out my window right now, that is filled with 680 crew members on a cruise ship that's just stuck there. They're not allowed to leave the ship, so they're all just sitting on the ship. It's a petri dish. But with that said, I haven't seen much evidence of anything here at all. I mean, most of the people who got it were on cruise ships or were in Mexico City, which is crazy polluted and people have lung problems, or are just tourists from Europe that left like 3 weeks ago, and they're still counting that into the number for Mexico. So honestly, people on the ground here are like, this is nonsense. There's a few people that watch a lot of TV, or what a lot of people call whitesicans, that live here and like tune into CNN every day in English and watch every second of it and repeat every second of it. I've met a few people like that, but for the most part, everyone's like, no, this is a giant control racket meant to enslave humanity. Like literally every waiter, every waitress, every bartender, every business owner, everyone I talk to here is like, yeah, this is nonsense. This is a conspiracy by the CIA to take over the world. And I'm like,
maybe they just know who you are and they just want a big tip.
Yeah, right. Well, no, not the case.
But they just wanted to get him to shut up. They're like, all right, this will get him out of here. If we just...
No, because if they knew that you were, they know that you're poor. So.
Oh, this is a bad idea, bringing Kingsley on. I want to point out, though, that there are a lot of people going into the hospitals in many places. Like in Winnipeg, Canada, we're seeing a lot of people, a huge influx into the hospitals, but they're also overrepresenting the numbers in places like China, or no, in the US. Well, in China, they underrepresented. So we see a higher death rate in China per capita, a much lower in the United States, but a higher amount of people that are being sick in the United States, so-called, quote unquote. I posted a video yesterday that I want everyone to check out about the Chinese global takeover, because I believe this is more closely connected to a multi-decade rollout of technocracy around the world, and this is their way to get into that. China looks good right now. The U.S. looks bad. U.S. collapses. China rises up as a new world reserve currency. But with that said, yeah, they in China they have all these people. Their phone numbers are disappearing, and yet where are they? They're all fine. They cured coronavirus, but in the U.S. they're literally telling people who have pneumonia that they have coronavirus. Someone dies of a heart attack, but they have some lung condition at the time when they die, and they write it down as coronavirus. Like, it's crazy.
I messaged my friend in Singapore who's born in China, has family there still, and I was saying, hey, you're gonna be all right, and he said he's more worried about me, and I was a little confused about that, but he said because China is more authoritarian, they have everything on lockdown, so he was more, but
we need to be more authoritarian so that
right.
we don't get
yeah, so that's the thing. It's like I'm not really actually worried about the coronavirus, besides what Josh, you brought up, and I think I told you about the my testes potentially being infertile from getting this, which I'm not sure. I haven't seen any real recent news about that, but I'm real curious.
A lot of people are talking about that, and there seems to be a lot of evidence based on tests done in China of men who got the coronavirus that they are losing their fertility rate at a rapid pace, which has already been dramatically dropped off a cliff in the last 15 years.
I talked with a doctor today who wasn't able to corroborate that. That was one of the questions we had, but we do see up on the screen that video that you were talking about yesterday. So China's global COVID-19 takeover. So it's doing pretty well. So if you guys want to go watch that video, I'll go.
It's funny. It's doing pretty well. 6K. That's what I used to get when I had like 25,000 subscribers. But anyway, I'm not gonna go to whatever. Anyway, on to the next. I want to bounce to another story here, which is out of Yahoo News. I thought this was kind of interesting. I've seen this being shared around. What are you guys laughing at? If we can pull that article up on the screen there, Tim.
Sorry. Yahoo News. Where are we going?
No. It's none of the, there we go. Back. Last one. No, you're going back. Go back to the Yahoo, the big Y. Nope. The other way. The other Y.
One more.
There we go.
Oh, Yahoo. I thought you were saying Yahoo.
Yahoo.
Oh, Yahoo. Okay.
Wait, what's that? What's that, Kingsley?
Oh, I just screamed Yahoo.
Okay, I was just seeing if you would do that again. Anyway, so out of Yahoo News here, it says the National Guard conducted door-to-door checks with Rhode Island police to track down New Yorkers traveling into the state. And there is a huge problem right now with authoritarianism and governments utilizing this crisis, not letting a crisis go to waste in order to basically restrict any remaining free will that people might have as far as gun grabs, as far as, I mean, we went into the HR 5717 the other day, which basically puts, I think it was a 50% tax on guns. Let me pull.
Yeah, it was 30% on guns, 50% on ammo. And I just want to say, for one, that I know Kingsley probably feels the same way, that it's just terrible how many people in the NYPD are getting coronavirus, and now they can't breathe apparently. So maybe
I know it's crazy how this is happening. I feel bad for them and for their families. Anyway,
so this was a House resolution that they're trying to push through?
So yeah, it's called HR 5717. It's the Gun Violence Prevention and Community Safety Act of 2020, which has a 30% tax on all firearms sold, a 50% tax on ammunition, and you need a license to touch a firearm, but you need to touch a firearm to get a license by taking a class. So it's just like an oxymoron. It makes no sense. We got it up on the screen here, and it sponsors Representative Johnson Henry C. Hank Jr., and it was introduced on January 30th. And
oh my God, Hank Jr. That guy is the biggest idiot in all of Congress. And actually, he was voted I think 12th most effective member. This is the guy, Hank freaking Johnson. This is the guy who thought Guam, being an island, if it had too many people from the military on it, would tip over.
Oh, I remember that. That's great. Yeah.
It's actually a great video. If you guys go and YouTube
after this,
Guam, after this, of course, Guam tipping over, and he's like, no, if we put too many people on the island, won't the island just get,
tip over into the sea?
Tip over into the sea.
And he's still in office.
And this was probably, I don't know, 2004 when he said that.
Yeah,
and meanwhile, he's talking to like 5-star generals. And you're like, sir, it's not our experience that if you put too many people on the island, it will not tip over.
I don't know. I saw some 5-star generals. They were like, wait a second, does that make sense?
But yeah, I don't know. They're not the smartest folks, are they?
I'm gonna go look it up too, because I remember seeing that he was voted. Maybe it's on Wikipedia. He was voted 12th most effective member of Congress too, and he thinks.
No, it makes perfect sense. We live in idiocracy, and we have people that think islands float, and if you have too many people on them, they'll sink.
Is Rand Paul? Is he coughing on everybody in DC yet, or?
Well, I've crossed my fingers. But anyway, I do want to note what's going on here with these door-to-door checks, because I want to bounce to the next article, if we can pull that up, Tim, out of thehill.com, one of my favorite.
Oh, actually, real quick. So I found the effectiveness article, and actually, I'm over here, Jamie on the spot. In 2014, he was named 18th most effective Democrat in the 112th. Okay, I guess Democrat, or I guess anyway, they're all jokes. Anyways, yeah, we'll go.
If you're an effective Democrat, you want to pass as many bills as you can, tax people as much as you can, take guns as much as you can. But I want to bounce to this Hill article. You had it right next to there we go. Out of the Hill, it says Virginia governor issues stay-at-home order. And now what's interesting about this story, guys, is that they are pushing forward crazy gun legislation right now in Virginia. Obviously, Northam, blackface, Northam. He has been at the top of the chain as far as eroding gun rights in Virginia, one of the most important states to the revolution, we might add. And so what's happening right now is it's illegal to protest. It's illegal to go up against this gun grabbing in a time where guns are going off the shelf like crazy. And, people are buying up guns in mass, buying up ammo in mass because they're worried about not just the government, but also, people without food banging on their door demanding food. I mean, like there could be food wars.
They banned karate too over there too. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So hand-to-hand combat. So, but what's crazy is that you have this moron. Actually, he's kind of smart because people aren't doing anything about it and he's taking advantage of it. But pushing gun legislation while telling people that if they walk out in the streets and they don't have permission, they don't have proof, they can spend a year in prison or a $2,500 fine, which is kind of a different situation. 1 year in prison, $2,500. I'll pay the $2,500 and take out a loan from a bankrupt bank. But here's the issue. In Spain, you have a very similar law, similar laws, same with in Australia right now. But what's crazy is that in Spain, if you have a permission slip, there's still evidence of countless people in Spain getting beaten in the streets by police for walking down the street. And if we bounce to the next article, we see a similar thing happening in Maryland. Baltimore, such a great place. Shining hope for the nation. Maryland governor describes stay-at-home order as one of the last tools in our arsenal. More fear-mongering and also more evidence that in another place where they're seizing guns, we have red flag laws going crazy there. People actually getting killed at their doorstep for having guns.
Yeah, right here in Phoenix, in Arizona, we, as of today, I think, I don't know what time, like 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm not going to pay attention to it anyways. They've issued a stay-at-home order. Now, there's no teeth to that order at all. So basically what they've gone ahead and said is that every single business is basically essential. So it really means nothing. And the police are not going to enforce it. And then all the liberals are like, this is terrible. We need police to enforce this. And then they're also being like, we don't need police brutality, but yet we need men with guns to go around harassing everybody and to shoot them. So yeah, I was still taking my kids to the park and people are like, like, oh, you went through the police tape and your kids are going down the slide. They're going to get coronavirus.
Dude, here in Mexico, I walk by a bridge and there's a swamp under the bridge. I got video of this. It'll be up in my upcoming vlogs, but there's like little kids just swimming and bathing in mud below a bridge here. And they're not like poor. They just do that. I talk to other Mexicans. They're like, oh yeah, like we grow up, we play in the mud. Yeah, there's dogs in there. The dog's like crapping in the water right next to the kid. The kid's swimming in it. It's like, it's disgusting. I wouldn't do it. But hey, I mean, they got a good immune systems for a reason out here. And, the difference between your kids literally walking on a playground with stupid police tape on it and people freaking out over it, it just goes to show how coddled people have become in the West. And that also leads to...
Like every swing had the tape on it, every entrance, everything.
Like these guys in the government are just touching all the swings.
Yeah, every individual swing. And then people are like, I saw this Russian lady walk by and her daughter was probably like 12 or 13. The daughter was going to go on a monkey bars. And she's like, no, go over there. Like, you're going to get coronavirus. Like, it's just so ridiculous.
It's hot in Phoenix. The weather can't even contain the coronavirus.
So Phoenix is basically unaffected then? I mean, practically speaking? Like, just every day?
This whole crackdown starts tonight, so I don't know. The thing is, I live a pretty quarantine lifestyle. I just do YouTube stuff. I basically stay at home.
And you live in a padded room right there.
Live in a padded room, so I just read all the Federal
Reserve. We should all be living in padded rooms. In the future, we might be. At the way that it's going, I don't know, guys. But hit that like button, by the way, those that are just tuning in and watching our video. Send in those questions, send in those super chats. I do want to get to a super chat real quick here. Stephen Williams sent 10 Canadian dollars in the super chat. Thank you very much, Stephen. I really appreciated that. He says, love your focus. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that sends those super chats and hits that like button and shares on social media. Also, make sure to check out our new newsletter at www.imband.com. That's www.imband.com. Also find us on float.app, flote.app. Kingsley, of course, is the CEO of float.app, and we have seen some more fluctuation happening there lately because of a rebroadcast of Tinfoil Hat podcast with Sam Tripoli that just aired on YouTube, where I was on and we talked a bit about Float. So everyone should go on there. It's replacing many social media platforms that are censoring people and stopping people from being able to reach their audience. And I think everyone should go over there. We're going to talk a bit more about it later, but definitely go join www.flote.app, float.app, and find me at Josh Sigurdson as well as at Wham. And you can find Tim Picciott at The Liberty Advisor. And of course, you can find Kingsley Edwards at King, King. We're going to go into much more right away. I want to continue on with this issue of tyranny, jumping to the Independent article. There's Float. Lots of good memes. Watch out, no nudity pops up.
Yeah, he was right up top. So good to be the king, I guess.
All right. So as this article out of The Independent says, coronavirus. Social distancing may need to go on for almost 12 months, UK's scientific advice says. And they've been talking about maybe even 2 years, forcing people 70 years and older to be in their home without leaving by law, by force, by the point of a gun. While they're taking away guns, while they're seizing properties, basically complete seizure of property rights with the rent. Everyone says, oh, free rent, that sounds great. Yeah, it sucks to not be able to work because of the government, and then the government comes in and pays your rent, but where's that money coming from? Well, it's not even taxes at this point because there's no taxes to take. It's literally being funded with printing of currency at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, they go, the government is good at breaking your leg and then giving you a crutch, after they've already broken your leg.
Yeah.
What country is handling this best? I heard like maybe South Korea is doing all right. I think they were rapid in their response to testing, and I'm pretty sure that businesses are still open there. But I'm not.
Yeah, I've heard from some people out there. I've heard Thailand is. It's weird because in Thailand people are still watching too much TV and freaking out about. White people there, thinking because the news is telling them that white people are bringing coronavirus and giving Thai people coronavirus. There's a similar issue in Mexico, but I'm going to be biased here. I honestly think Mexico is handling it better than almost any country, but not generally speaking, because there are places in Mexico that aren't handling it well, like Oaxaca, which is kicking out any Airbnb people that are staying at hotels. Basically, all gringos are being kicked out and being banned from getting a place. There's lots of shutdowns, but they're all already talking about.
Don't forget about Belarus. The Belarus president was playing hockey yesterday and says global coronavirus measures are a complete psychosis. And then it goes on to show him playing hockey yesterday. So
he would, wouldn't he? Well, and also the Mexican president is walking around still shaking hands in large crowds and huge gatherings and kissing babies and stuff, like literally like kissing babies. Not in like a Joe Biden way, but and
I saw it. So he goes, Joe Biden grows a mustache so that way he can sniff his own hair while he's quarantined.
Oh my God. That's terrible. But yeah, so I mean, I think Mexico's actually handling it rather well. Just in Jalisco, they're still telling people to come here. Federally, they're saying don't come here. But in the Jalisco province, which has Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, where I am, they're still telling people to come, though they're still shutting down a lot of places. There's thug inspectors walking around the streets in blue, harassing business owners and threatening to close their businesses for 2 months at a time if they don't watch out. And just for fun, that they'll just shut down businesses for fun. It's like the usual douches that walk around calling themselves, police and men of honor. But what the reality is that people aren't listening. From whatever, every waiter, waitress, bartender, anyone you talk to around here in Mexico, at least in Puerto Vallarta, they say, well, yeah, they impose things, but we don't listen. Like, for example, they said, businesses with 50 capacity and over cannot serve alcohol by itself. They have to serve it with food, which makes no sense. It's totally arbitrary. But what's happening is that they serve you apple slices at the door for free, so that they can serve you alcohol just alone. Solo bobitos, por favor. I say, please, just drinks for now. And they say, okay. And you get apples because then it's legal. And that is how they get around it here. And they're like, well, when they tell people to stay in their home and that they're not allowed to leave, no one's going to listen. It's Mexico, as people say here. People don't listen to government. And that's the way it's kind of going in this place.
It's interesting, Gare, one of your favorite restaurants, Lazy Dog, right up the street. They started, they had to shut down non-essential, all that BS, but they started serving or selling essential items so they could stay open, which is actually pretty smart from a business perspective. So they started selling like eggs, milk, and all these things that they have supplies of.
Smart.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even deep into the coronavirus crisis in Las Vegas, they still had like a huge outdoor area with dogs and people eating side by side, and it's like,
we were there till like the last day.
I actually really liked the place, but the problem was if you go outside, you're surrounded by dogs, which is great, but they're crapping right next to you while you're eating, so it's not that great. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people there's businesses need to survive, and businesses will do what they need to survive, just like people will do what they need to ensure that their family survives. And some businesses are going to go all out and completely change their game plan. Others will just die and suffer. And some will try their best and still suffer and die because we are in the worst, most volatile environment, I think, in the history of mankind outside of the USSR and China right now for starting a business or having a business. I mean, there's a place in Las Vegas called Jing that opened like a week and a half before the collapse. And what do? I mean, people didn't save money. They weren't able to save money in like the week and a half that they were working there. And, you know, they spent a year building the place. And that's the tale of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of businesses around the world right now. I would say that, maybe not hundreds, tens of millions, but I would say that we are probably going to look at least a billion jobs being wiped out around the world out of 7 billion people, a billion jobs. I think that's.
Think of all that winning.
Yeah, we're going to win so hard. You're going to beg me, please stop. Too much winning. Please stop winning. And I'm going to say, no, we got to keep on winning. And seriously, that's going to be played for centuries.
Well, one of the best economic indicators that I learned growing up was looking at the Vegas Strip. And every time you see multiple multi-billion-dollar, corporations building all these projects there, a few will go up, and then just like in 2008, then something happens, right. And then there's just now there's going to be more buildings on the Strip that are just.
Well, in Las Vegas, I mean, the night that I left, that I just decided, okay, I'm getting the F out of here. I'm booking tickets, and 6 hours after I booked the tickets and Airbnb, I was on a plane flying to Mexico, and then they're like, we're closing the borders right after. I felt, I can't tell you how happy I was to get out of there, because I'm looking at you guys right now. I'm like, oh man, that looks like crap. It's not as bad as it could be yet, but I think it's a trickle down right now. But I remember we went down the Las Vegas Strip, Kingsley, and there's very few people out there. And there's a couple people out on, on Fremont Street in Las Vegas. But what's crazy is that back in 2008, they started building this place called the Fontainebleau, and the recession hit. And they left this building vacant, this skyscraper. It was a huge building, and it just sat there for years, for 10 years, more than 10. In 2019, they started building it again. And now the biggest global depression in history hits. It's just evidence of people getting way too ahead of themselves, thinking money just grows on trees, thinking that they can just swim in a pool of money and that everything will be okay. And honestly, this is why I'm really liking the minimalist lifestyle a lot more, because I don't get caught in that. What's that?
It actually does grow on trees, and nowadays it is printed with our new digital dollar.
It grows on zeros and ones in a computer now, because we're going completely cashless, guys. By the way, before I get into that, I do want to thank Paul Succi, who sent 40 Canadian dollars in the super chat in digital currency. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, man. It helps a lot. Those super chats go a long way, and you are a hero for that. So thank you so much. It's all that I make here at WAM at this point. And checking those links below, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar help a lot too. But again, those super chats go a long way. So thank you very much. Again, at the end of the month here, it's very important that we get in as much dollars as possible so that we can continue this operation. Because I did leave everything behind in Las Vegas.
Yeah, donate them while they're still worth something right now. So
Well, and that's the thing, Tim, because we were talking in my most recent video. I did a report that I posted yesterday on the Chinese global takeover. And in the title of this video, I say who benefits. So there are people that benefit from this crisis. Even if the old guard system collapses, there are people within the old guard system that benefit, creating a new world order. And this isn't the world order that you expect from Britain, from the US, from France, from Canada, from the North American Union. None of that. This is a different world order that most people didn't see coming, but many people tried to warn of for years. And that is, and I'll just quickly go through it. In the early 1970s, Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong, creating an alliance with China, creating a trade monopoly with China after years of separation, leading into the creation of the Trilateral Commission under Zbigniew Brzezinski under Jimmy Carter's presidency, which led to what Zbigniew Brzezinski called his hope for a technocratic superstate and a massive grid tied to facial recognition, chips, tracking, all that kind of stuff, cashless societies, if you will. Perhaps the special drawing rights, etc.
Eisenhower warned about it in his farewell address, and the warning of a technocratic military-industrial complex takeover in his final.
Absolutely, and now we're living in a future where China has social credit, smart city grids, and it's full on totalitarian fascio-communism on steroids with facial recognition and a cashless society tied into the central banking system, and now. We have China, they go, oh, we have the coronavirus, it's terrible, it's killing people, the markets are crashing in China, it's terrible. And then suddenly it spreads to the US, the numbers get bigger in the US, and then China goes, oh, actually, all is well here. We've cured it. When all these people are just disappearing, there's evidence that they're incinerating thousands of people, and phone numbers are just being disconnected in the millions. And there's evidence from whistleblowers that they're actually completely covering up the numbers, and they're underrepresenting the numbers in China while overrepresenting them in the States. The US collapses, China rises up as a new world superpower, especially convenient since they have the most outgoing tourists going to different countries around the world of any other place. Obviously the most populated country, but also it's insane. No matter where you go in the world, you'll see busloads of Chinese tourists. It was a perfect storm to spread around the world. And now China says everything's okay. And, now the banking crisis hits the United States, the UK, etc. And China rises up as the new world reserve currency. That's what I think is happening, and it's completely cashless.
I say better China than Canada, but anyway.
Yeah, May of 2018, I had only an 8-minute podcast titled "The Perfect Storm is Brewing," and the entire thing had to deal with, okay, if we're going to supposedly sell $50 billion of bonds a month starting in October, well, then who's going to buy those bonds? I mean, traditionally, the largest buyer of bonds has been the Federal Reserve. Okay, now you're going to be the biggest seller. Then the second biggest buyer is China. Okay, well, we're in a trade war with them. Okay, the third biggest buyer is Japan. And, oh, yeah, they're the most indebted first world country in the world. And then we're going to have a $1.2 trillion deficit. So on top of $600 billion that the Fed was planning on selling, then we're going to need to finance another $1.2 trillion. So now we're at $1.8 trillion. And who the hell is going to buy that? That's going to make the interest rates go up. That's going to then pop the stock market bubble. Then the Fed's going to have to renege on every single thing they said they were going to do. And that was May 2018. How did I know it? How come every single big investment bank? How come The Economist? And how come, why is this one guy sitting in a padded room over here in Arizona able to figure out this other stuff when nobody else, when obviously, John and you guys and, people watching this, they haven't figured out. This is all telegraphed. We all knew this was coming, and it was The Perfect Storm was Brewing. That the exact title of it was called The Perfect Storm is Brewing. That is the same perfect storm that kicked everything off back in 2018. And this is now, then we, hobbled it together, threw a bunch of duct tape at this, create an even bigger bubble, sucked more people into this to help them lose their retirements even faster. And now here we are today where, instead of selling $50 billion of bonds a month, instead of getting the Fed's balance sheet from 4.4 trillion down to zero, they went from 4.4 trillion down to 3.7 trillion, now on its way to 6 trillion, on its way to 10 trillion, on its way to owning the entire world is where it's going.
And
it's insane.
It's really because at least in the financial industry, I know because they, it's indoctrination just like anything else. I remember taking the Series 7 and literally one of the questions, paraphrasing, but it was like, the Federal Reserve is good, true or false? And I know what I had to put because to pass the test, but I knew what the correct answer was. And even with the CFA test as well, I took the first test, but I stopped studying halfway through because you're just learning complete trash the whole time, and it's just your brain you're just filling it up with nothing.
It's indoctrination. That's peak indoctrination. That's exactly what people get in school too, which is why it's great that most schools are canceled for the rest of the year. Thank the Lord for that. But it's crazy because I left school when I was pretty young. I went to do my GED years ago, and I never even studied for it. I just showed up because I knew what they'd want me to write. I never studied. I got 98% on it. And they would say this or that, just like an opinion thing. And they know that they want you to say certain things, especially in the social studies bit. What's crazy, what I had lost 2 points on was in English because they asked me, what did this poet mean by this metaphorical sentence?
Probably you're there wrong or.
Well, and I'm like, I said this poet leaves it subjective for the individual to decide what they're saying because I don't read their mind. They took 2 points off because they're like, no, they meant this. I'm like, okay, whatever, screw you. But the point is, that's how it works in schooling. It's not education, it's indoctrination. And that's what the media does today too. That's how we have Chris Cuomo being diagnosed with coronavirus from his home after not leaving his house for like 15 days and lecturing the nation about staying inside all the time. And his brother being the governor of New York. Never seen so much propaganda in my life. It's ridiculous. And honestly, with everything that's going on in the economy right now, it's a perfect timing because people are going to get dependent and beg these propagandists to feed them information. Tim is putting on his mask that in no way is going to help him.
Hey, if maybe Chris Cuomo was wearing one of these from his house, he wouldn't have gotten it, Josh. You can never be too careful.
So this is the thing, those masks, this is the incompetence of the government. The government tells people to wear these masks at these restaurants and at these bars and places like that. Those masks actually collect germs. They're for not spreading things to other people. They're not from stopping you from getting things. It actually, germs stick to the fabric and then stick around your nose and your mouth. So you're more likely to catch it with these things on. I see people at airports. I was wearing one at the airport and then I'm like looking into it after. I'm like, that's stupid. And people are wearing surgical masks, like just, it's like a cloth on their face. I'm like, dude, the germs still go through it and they stick to it. So they stick for longer periods of time. It's a bad idea. But the incompetent government tells
February
everyone
19th. Coming back from Anarcho, I was wearing one through the international side of the airport, mainly just to be a dick to the TSA agents because to make it harder for them. And they were seriously wondering. They're like, why do you have a mask on? Like, and I'm like, well, you know, there is a coronavirus thing. And actually I taped it. So in case people want to call me out on this, and they were just perplexed and they're like, why would anyone have a mask on? And now, you know, go and see where the chain of events are today and get back to the government indoctrination. 2 classes away from being an economics major, I was like, this is complete crap. And then I decided just to stick with being just a business major because I'm like, why am I taking this class on all this economic calculus BS that means nothing? And okay, great. Sorry, I don't technically have an economics major, which means I'm not as qualified as Alexander Ocasio-Cortez or maybe Maxine Waters or
don't forget Paul Krugman.
That's why I actually dropped out of school because in my economics classes, they showed me this chart of and the Federal Reserve was at the head of it. And they're like, this is how the economy works and the Fed is essential. And I said, and at that time I was just beginning my, looking into Mises and, learning from Ron Paul and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, when you ask questions to professors, they can't answer them.
Which is weird because there used to be a tactic in universities back in the 1950s, even though there was indoctrination obviously back then too, where they played ideas against each other. They had laissez-faire versus, Keynesianism and Marxism, and they debated out in a course. I've seen some documentaries from the 1950s that are brilliantly display this, and it's totally different now. I mean, even Ron Paul in the book And the Fed talks about meeting Bill O'Reilly back in the late 1960s. And Bill O'Reilly, he was basically a laissez-faire, free market capitalist, no government intervention, anti-central bank person back then. He also talks about Alan Greenspan being the same back then.
Yep.
And obviously things really change. And I want to go back to Kingsley in a moment about this.
There's videos of Bill O'Reilly, which you can't find it today, which, I remember watching this back in the early days of YouTube.
We'll do it live.
No, not there's that one too. But there's he's like, F it, we'll do it live. But there's another video where he goes on and talk about the New World Order and all these different conspiracy theories, and you can't find that video anymore. And so what they do is they get these guys who are their biggest detractors and they bring them on board. So Alan Greenspan, big time.
Glenn Beck.
Big time gold bug. And now, he's up there and he's like, well, if his mental gymnastics, like, oh, well, if I wasn't the one that was up there, dictating stuff, then there'd be somebody even worse. And so I need to give in to their demands or else we'd be in a worse situation. And want to give a special thank you to Chip Fernandez helping.
Yeah, I want to do that right now because Chip Fernandez sent $9.99 in the super chat. Says, please order yourself a shot of top shelf tequila. Keep up the good work. I really appreciate that. There's no shortage of top shelf tequila out here, and $9.99, 999 as Herman Cain would say, that will buy me like 6 shots of tequila, top shelf tequila here in Mexico. So thank you so much. I'm not going to do that all at once because that'll be counterproductive, but I really appreciate the super chats and
stop fueling Josh's alcohol
you need
problem.
At least 6 to kill the corona. At least 6.
Oh my god! But so Kingsley, I want to ask you a little bit about your thought because you've been following, the Ron Paul movement going back about as far as I have been, but you were heavily involved and obviously older at the time because you're ancient. So tell me all about. People have been talking about this catastrophe eventually happening, and now we're witnessing the greatest global depression in history. Do you feel vindicated at all? What do you think?
Not really. It's funny. I mean, vindicated. Not really, because we all knew this was going to happen. It's all math, right? We know, and we know who we follow and who we read from and learn from. That throughout history they've been right more times than wrong. And the people that are promoted in the mainstream are usually always wrong and always lead to more kind of authoritarian dictatorship throughout the world. So it's funny because a lot of people are like freaking out, and even people that are in, in the movement are like freaking out. But I kind of like calculate these things already in my head and already know that they're coming. So when it actually happens, it's like, well, yeah, it's here. So now how, it's like, okay, well, what do I look into now to figure out how we can survive best and move forward?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, vindicated, I mean, sure, but it's not like I'm like gloating about it or anything. It's just, this is the economic
Yeah, well,
reality.
it's a terrible thing because we're witnessing millions of jobs get wiped out, and people have no idea what to do. And I tell people to get prepared forever, and now it's like it's not too late yet, but it's almost too late to even prepare, because like stores are limiting the amount you could buy, and people are stuck in a situation where they don't have enough food. They just have a ton of toilet paper for 5 years, and they have people who are obviously they're loading up ammo and everything, getting ready for whatever might come next. You have government coming after people's liberties, and then people who are going to be desperate and do what they need to do for their family to get food, and that's going to lead to a lot of home invasions, robberies, thefts, possibly killings, and there's already riots in streets in many places around the United States right now. I'm just really concerned about where that's going to go in the near future. And obviously, another thing that people keep pointing out here, and I want to bring up because people think I'm covering it up, but I just haven't talked about it enough as much as I should, is Event 201. And obviously, there was a prior planned exercise that was happening at the same time, that it was almost the exact same thing as what we've seen with the coronavirus.
That's the coincidence.
Yeah, and well, they do the same exercise every year. I do want to note that. However, it's just interesting that they did it with all these politicians, these news anchors, these business owners, government officials across the world, Bill Gates being a sponsor. And then Bill Gates leaves Microsoft along with like 200 other big major CEOs at the same time. And he's like, I'm going to focus on health and like vaccines and stuff. And it's like, I wonder how that's all going to play out in the near future. Cashless society, communist seizure of private property, printing trillions of dollars, inflation, Venezuela-style inflation at some point down the road here, housing market crash, forced vaccinations, gun seizures, not being allowed to walk down the street. Depopulation. I mean, this is the craziest time anyone could possibly be alive. And so as far as vindication goes, obviously it's not a good thing.
So yesterday, Josh and I were talking last night, and I was telling him I used to wake up, every day for about the last 12 years, and we might check, Drudge or Zero Hedge once that came about. And I would look like, it's today the day. It's today the day when the world's ending. And, what I meant by that is, the whole financial, Federal Reserve, the whole financial set of things kicking in motion. And now I don't wake up thinking that, because we've already crossed that Rubicon with the Fed coming in and buying everything, talking about digital dollar, talking about negative interest rates. It's like everything that we were warning of is already like, we're at the doorstep of this right now. And we can't even stress how important this is. And people are still saying we're fear mongering. And, this is not a great time to be taking the victory lap. And in terms of preparing from an investment standpoint, I think there's a ton of money to be made throughout all this. And so, if you're with your guy who, let it sit and, rode you down all the way down throughout this, is he going to be the guy that then knows the things to get into to then help ride it back up? And probably the answer to that is no. And so, there are things from an investment standpoint. I wish I pimped this harder months ago, because I could have saved a lot of people a lot of money. And we're, very grateful for the people coming over now.
And that leads to actually saving people's lives too. I mean, people's lives can be saved by such plans when they have money saved, when they're able to provide for their family and don't end up in a desperate situation. Like in Las Vegas and Phoenix, I mean, what are you going to steal farm animals? I mean, like Venezuelans? Because I know out here in Mexico, you have coconuts, you have the ocean where you have fish that you can get. But in most places, landlocked places, if you don't know what you're doing for the most part, which most people don't, because we've weakened culture. Again, it's strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men, and we go in a circle. And that's exactly what we're witnessing today when we see a couple of years ago videos going viral of kids trying to use a can opener, and they can't use a can opener on a can of soup.
Is TP edible?
What?
Is TP edible?
TP, well, I mean, you can try it out. Actually, this is a great way to have Kingsley on Wham. Go get a roll of toilet paper and start eating it, Kingsley.
Okay.
Dude, and that quote that you always butcher every time is adversity makes men and prosperity makes monsters. So
but it's been quoted in multiple different ways. Mandela effect. This goes back a long time, because it's been quoted in multiple different ways going over there. People, I think the first reference I've seen to this was actually in the 1700s.
It's on the Rosetta Stone tablet from ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah. Josh found it in
Rosetta Stone out of Egypt.
But it is interesting because like Tim and I actually share a pretty close resembling story as far as our history. He's obviously still in finance now, but when I first got into finance, it was just basically about like a month before. I just got my Series 7. I didn't even have a degree. I took the Series 65 by myself before I even got into the world, because you could take it by yourself without getting sponsored. And I was reading, Mises and looking at Zero Hedge and all this kind of stuff. Or actually, I'm not even sure it's Zero Hedge. I don't think Zero Hedge was
Zero Hedge was created January 9th, 2009. So.
That's right. Yeah. It was before Zero Hedge, actually. And my boss, it was, we were a boutique firm. I think we had at the time, like 80 million under assets or something like that. And I kept stressing like, hey, we need to put our cash or our clients into cash or gold or, something, because something is going on here. And I remember my boss walking in, I was like 23 years old at the time. And he was just like, who's this kid who's fresh off the streets? And he's like, what are we going to do, Kingsley? Are we just going to do you expect me to put all our funds into cash? I said, hey, I think it's something we should really consider, or at least part of it or whatever. Anyway, a week later, literally, the market's, going crazy, as we're seeing, kind of similar to now. And he comes in, he's just like, all his clients are basically, leaving him. And he's just like, I just wish I listened to you. And it's not even like listening to us or, even Tim, but you're, actually you got your eye on the ball so much more than, even I did back then. But it's just like, this is just math. Like
there's a huge price to pay. If you're a financial advisor and you're doing something different than what the average person is doing, and you end up being wrong or late, and I wouldn't say necessarily wrong, just late. And so, I mean, the group that I'm at right now, Innovative Advisor Group. So my personal moniker is the Liberty Advisor, but the company I'm with is Innovative Advisor Group. Kirk will put everybody in cash in 2007 and was getting his butt chewed out for an entire year by people leaving him. Because
get his butt chewed out?
Well, I didn't want to say get his ass chewed out on here, but
it's just there's no good way of saying that.
No, but you get reamed out by people saying, listen, we're not hiring you to sit in your effing hands and sit in cash. And I was getting people saying this to me in January when we had some new people came on in January, and some of them we bought put options for, some of them we left in cash because people have different needs. Some people need money in like 6 months or in a year or 2 years of different things they want to buy, and other people it's like, hey, it's 10 years down, so we have different strategies now. Even my clients who are mainly hardcore libertarian, voluntarist, anarchists, WAM viewers and, alternative media viewers, even they were pressuring us, and we didn't budge, and we let them know what we thought. But however, that can only go on for so long. And what we decided was a better way to hedge this was to make money when it goes up and to not lose money when it goes down. So we had a put option hedge strategy where essentially we knew that the most we could lose was 5% based on how things were structured. It's not a stop loss, not anything like that. And then we also knew that, hey, if the market keeps going up and up and up, that we'd benefit from that as well. It's not a silver bullet. It's not always going to work. You don't always want to be in this. We've already actually shifted into other strategies now. And so you could be part of those strategies right now, or you could, keep putting your head down in the sand. And in 2008, I was running my school's endowment fund, specifically financial stocks. That's the only. I was just manager of the financial stocks. I didn't want to be the whole manager because I thought I didn't know enough. And then I got on there and realized I knew more than all those people. And then realized, this is all BS. And I was vetoing everything they wanted to buy. We kept it all in cash, and that endowment ended up having the best return in America that year. AKA, we lost the least amount of money, because I was stubborn and put the whole thing in cash. But I was getting chewed up by the dean. I wouldn't say my butt was getting chewed up, but the dean said, we didn't hire you to go sit on your hands. I'm like, well, A, you didn't hire me. I'm here for free and actually paying you guys. By the way, thank you. You're welcome. Because those guys inherited that fund, had Money Magazine with fake money being rained down on them, and now work at the Federal Reserve. So anyway, sorry, quick aside. Probably a better story than Josh getting a 98%.
I do. Well, I do want to quickly ask Tim, how much longer do you have before your next call? I just want to quickly.
I don't have a call to the top of the hour, but I'd rather have some. I haven't really moved at all today, so I'd like to probably get up and do something at some point.
Okay. So I want to mention.
Put on your super chat for swim. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
I want to mention a super chat from Vention MGTOW that sent $20 in the super chat. Thank you very much, man. That's awesome. Always helping out a lot. It says, this crash had to happen anyway. The virus just triggered it. It's too convenient, though. It happened at just the right time. It gives the elites something to blame the crash on. False flag? I think 100% yes. I think that is a perfect conclusion to come to here. In my opinion, I think this is all controlled. It's all planned. It's all laid out in the playbook and probably has been for a long time. People say, well, this doesn't benefit the Fed. This doesn't benefit. Well, Bitcoin will replace the Fed now because, it's a perfect storm for all this stuff. And it's like maybe down the line, but for the time being, I think we are witnessing the creation of a global cashless society and complete fascist communist state, as some memes have been going around saying, enjoy your 30-day free trial of communism. And honestly, that's what I feel is happening right now. We are witnessing communism in effect in a very minor form, and we're going to see it explode and inflate in the next short while. So I think that 100% this is planned. I think it was a false flag event, and people can say whatever they want, but I believe that is the case. I wanted to quickly mention, everyone still watching, hit the like button on this video, share it on social media, check the links below, join our newsletter at www.imband.com. And you can become a client of Tim's at www.libertyadvisor.com. And we're going to go to Kingsley in a moment about float. I do want to mention something that Tim mentioned previously there was that, we don't want to have a victory lap here. But it's sad, though, when we say all this stuff for all these years, people say fear mongering, then it's literally happening. If you haven't looked outside, folks, this is the craziest time in our lives, any of our lives for sure. I mean, can you name another time in history, in recent history, that came anywhere close to this? People say World War II. Okay, sure, yeah, World War II, World War I, horrible events, terrible things, millions died. This is a major event, shook up the whole world. But what we're witnessing right now will probably be replaced by a war, because all monetary collision courses always end in a war. And we have a pandemic mixed with people subservient because of the pandemic out of fear and weak and dependent, begging the government to help, complete government takeover, pandemic, collapse of the economy, and just destruction of individual liberties. So I think this is by far one of the craziest times to be alive. I can't remember anyone getting a stay-at-home order. Even in Berlin in World War II, I'm pretty sure people were still able to walk outside. So, I mean, I think this is the creation of a global governance system, and I think it's out of China. So watch my latest video on my channel about the Chinese global takeover up in the video section on the channel. YouTube doesn't let me show my newest videos on the actual homepage of my own channel, so you have to click the videos tab to see it. But anyway, make sure to check that out. Hit the like button if you haven't already. So Kingsley, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. We have these propagandists on television, on CNN, Chris Cuomo with coronavirus and these kinds of people. And then you have this issue of a lot of YouTube videos being taken down by algorithm just for talking about coronavirus, just for talking about things. Even if you're just quoting an article, I've seen people posting Reuters articles and Bloomberg articles about the coronavirus, and their accounts are being suspended on Facebook for like 5, 6 days, 7 days. You've got float.app. Now, if everyone hasn't heard yet of float.app, everyone should go on float.app. It takes 2 seconds. It's flote.app. I'm going to write it in the chat. Make sure to go there, flote.app. Find us at Josh Sigurdson, at Wham, at The Liberty Advisor, and at King. Kingsley, what is your take on this craziness, utilizing something like Float to be able to get that message out and actually have these conversations about the craziest, most historic time in history?
Yeah, I think, I think it was just last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw a lot of people that were just posting even mainstream articles about coronavirus, and they were getting thrown in Facebook jail. They were being censored. Posts weren't showing up that they were posting. So, at times like this, definitely more than ever, it's important to join to support really any alternative social media site. But obviously, we prefer Float. We're also launching a Float Market for peer-to-peer marketplace next week, which we're really excited about. So to kind of help people, if it really comes to this, which it seems like it is, help people barter better on Float, and it's the same thing. It's accelerated. I mean, it's almost hats off to the people that, we feel that kind of orchestrated this. And just going back to your point real quick, you mentioned false flag, and I'm actually really concerned now that I feel like, we've already gotten to this point, and what would be the next point or the next thing to do to really, really accelerate this? And that is
next to nothing. Just one snap of the finger, something big happens, and they'll just pile them on top.
Yeah. So please support us at you can go to joinfloat.com. Also is another URL that works, brings you to the homepage. And all the alternative social media sites, they need people you can still use your Facebook, you can still use your YouTube, all this kind of stuff, your Twitter. But if you at least join these other sites like Float, it will help us, and it helps just kind of, not flatten the curve, but extend the curve.
I'm so sick of hearing flatten the curve.
Which we really need to do. We need to get off these sites. They're not run by good people. We just had Mark Zuckerberg live streaming with the governor of California yesterday, talking about some BS as always. And they censor people. They charge exorbitant fees for super chats like yourself. I mean, I know you see very little unfortunately, of what other people see in that Float. We have peer-to-peer transaction utilizing cryptocurrencies. We also finally are ready to launch wire integration so that people can buy cryptocurrency with their debit or credit card on Floats, which we're really excited about. We're making it as easy as possible for it almost to seem like a PayPal transaction for using cryptocurrency. And that will also help with marketplace as well. So
so we do have one comment from the Nomad Packs that says social media is just for spying. Are you spying on people, Kingsley?
No, we're the exact opposite. We actually care about our users. We're building this, really for what we want to use in the space that we have encrypted messaging. We track the only thing we basically hold is your user information so that you can log in, and also so that we can combat if spam occurs or people try to utilize the sites in ways that are against our rules.
But you're not using like artificial intelligence that's going to automatically take down people and end up going to a team review of a bunch of people that act like bureaucrats in some office in India.
No, we're the exact opposite of that. We're the antithesis of mainstream social media sites. And we, like I said, we're really building this for us and our families and our friends so that we can communicate with each other without being censored. I mean, this is a big deal going on now, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, and to be clear, the Nomad Pack meant I meant Facebook. I know. I just want to get into these issues because here's the thing, and this is my pitch as always, and I've said it a million times, but I think it's important that people hear it that haven't heard it yet. By the way, we're talking about float.app. That's flote.app. Go join. It takes 2 seconds. Seriously, it's the easiest privacy policy ever. Basically, from my perspective, watching Float grow and the potential of Float is that it can replace Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one. Eventually in multiple different ways, but still keep it very simplistic while having encrypted private messaging, which is important to a lot of people. And obviously you can have monetization on videos. It's off and on. It's coming up again, I know, right away. Monetization on videos for creators who've been demonetized on YouTube. And of course, super chats on live streams in cryptocurrency, which is helpful. And there's some people on Float right now that are running 24-hour type live stream kinds of events showing radio networks, I think Liberty Radio and stuff like that. And it's really cool because it's almost like a television channel, a 24-hour television channel. There's always stuff happening. There's great retention. People stay online a lot. And also, there's no algorithm, which for me, more than the money, by far is the reach, because I do this to reach people with answers. And it's not all one big echo chamber there either. People attack me all the time because they disagree, which I like, because it means that there's fluctuation of conversations happening on that platform, and there's no algorithm, so it cannot tell people what they can and cannot see. So I can reach people whether they like it or not. If they unfollow me, they don't have to see my message, but if they follow me, if I just posted, they'll see that I just posted, and they can like it, they can share it, they can comment. And honestly, I just think it's a really well-built website, and it's simplistic. It keeps things simplistic, rolling the clock back many years on a lot of these social media platforms, but gives it a new edge in a era where we have complete censorship, no privacy, all of our information going to China, which plays into what I said earlier about China creating that technocratic super state, social credit through Facebook, very real possibility coming up in the next couple of years. And so I think it's very important that people go on Float. Guys, Takes 2 seconds. Just go there and type in flote.app. Go there. It takes 2 seconds to get an account. Seriously, follow some people, join the community. There's a great community there. People are on all day, every day, talking, hanging out, having a good time. So I just think that people should go on there. Find me at Josh Searson, at WAM, as well as you can find Tim Picciott at The Liberty Advisor, and of course find Kingsley at King. I mean, what's the next step for Float?
Like I mentioned, so we're rolling out more ads, both network ads, and also so people, before we were experimenting with adding ad networks to support content creators, but unfortunately, because we do want to strictly on our business side deal in mostly cryptocurrency as much as possible. So we experienced some issues with that. So, but with the launch of our marketplace and our new ad system, anybody will be able to actually put an ad into Josh's videos. Dan Dix is on there. Luke is on there. We got James Corbett. Sam Tripoli, I know, has an account, and hopefully we'll get him up and running more soon. And people will be able to, sell items on Float, buy items on Float. They'll be able to post, Liberty Advisor can put an ad on there and put it in Josh's videos, Dan's videos, all this type of stuff. So big things in store.
And, people like Brian Forrester's on there at Brian. We see a lot of people on there that you would recognize. Even Stefan Molyneux's on there at Free Domain. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people. One person mentioned _M says, I'd love to see Tripoli live streaming on there. He told me he will, so let's hope that will happen soon. Tim is going to be on his show soon.
Tomorrow. So
yeah, so Tim is going to be on Sam Tripoli, I think, tomorrow. So maybe someone can nudge him a little bit again and say, hey, remember that whole thing? But yeah, I mean, and honestly, one person mentioned in the chat here, Calais Noko says, heard anything from G. Edward Griffin lately? Yeah, he's alive and well, as always, doing better than I am, really. The guy's healthier than I am. He's doing well, and I'm expecting to talk with him in the next couple of days because I need to tell him that I'm not allowed to go into the United States right now as a Canadian. So I might not be able to speak at the Red Pill Expo if that's even allowed to continue at Jekyll Island. But either way, you could use promo code WAM.
Well, I do have his article pulled up on screen right now. It's not his article. It's one that he reposted. And, it's probably even better to tease this maybe for next time because this is a whole big rabbit hole that we could get into for a while. But it's the U.S. is nationalizing many financial markets with money from the Federal Reserve, merging the Treasury with the Fed. I don't really necessarily buy that statement that a lot of people are making all around, different news outlets, especially in alternative media. But I do have to get going here at some point to get prepared for my next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to quickly do shout outs to the super chats. DT sent Canadian $5 in the super chat, says this stream was a good one. You should bring on special guests more often. Thanks, guys. Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat. And I appreciate all of that. And we are definitely going to be doing that more often. I sent out the link to a couple people today as well. Dan Dix let me down. He didn't show up, but hey, maybe next time. We got lots of shows coming up on the near horizon. The news is too crazy to report on a date, like record one day and post the next day. We have to do live streams because it's just by the turnover rate, the news has already changed by the time we get it up. We also have a super chat from Kingsley's fiance, Aaron. Sent $2 in the super chat and says float.app, flote.app. Absolutely. Their Nomad Pack says, why is it called Float? Kingsley?
It's funny. Our designer came up with the name. It was meant to be use a name to help people keep afloat. You can float people money. There's a lot of different meanings. I know me and you and Josh, we're kind of thinking of it almost even like as a digital Noah's Ark in a way as well, right. Where people jump ship. From the big behemoths today to our small nimble ship at Float. What was that?
I thought you said it was gonna be a funny story. No, sorry.
Oh no.
It's funny. It's a hilarious story. Anyway, yeah. Well, I mean, I know it really does work as a digital Noah's Ark, keeping the seeds of information alive on this boat, floating above the water while everything else kind of floats under it. Yeah, you kind of get drowned by false information, and obviously number one is censorship, and that is a huge problem. So I think everyone should go on float.app, flote.app, and I really appreciate everyone joining us today. We will do this more in the near future. Hopefully Kingsley will join us more in the future, and we got many people still watching, I mean, for a shadow ban channel anyway. So make sure to hit that like button if you have not already. Join us at www.imband.com. You can also become a client of Tim's at thelibertyadvisor.com or text WAM to 71441 for Tim's crisis retirement report. You can get your Teespring merchandise.
It's a whole presentation. So it's actually not a report. It's a presentation they gave at AnarchoVegas 2019 on how to retire right before a crisis environment and how to retire into a crisis environment. So if that isn't timely, I don't know what is. And that
seriously
paid a ton of money for at the time.
Absolutely. And obviously get your WAM merchandise at teespring.com. I believe they are still delivering in hazmat gear. So make sure to get your WAM merchandise there. I literally need to sell $1 more in merchandise so I can actually get a paid out for the last 3 months. I haven't been able to get my money out of Teespring because I need $1 more in sales. So buy a phone case or something. But yeah, you can obviously find us on Float at Josh Sigurdson. We have a new YouTube channel called Whamcast. So it's also linked below. All these things are linked below in the description. Whamcast. Go subscribe to Whamcast. We will be doing lots of podcasts, long form podcasts there soon. Hopefully the apocalypse doesn't get in the way, but make sure to subscribe there. We already have almost 100 subscribers there. So make sure to subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you more shadow ban stuff over there as well. But of course, we will be starting more stuff like this on Float. But anyway, carrying on, you can find us on GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. All these things help a lot. So go and find us on there. Just $1 a month or more will change everything for us and make it possible for us to bring you information that's more crucial than ever, as we're in the apocalypse right now, literally.
I'm
to bring you this
of having like the Sarah McLachlan movie, like with like little dogs, and for only $1 a month, starving Josh.
Yeah, well, but I mean, the thing is, this is literally the book of Revelations happening right now, guys. So, I mean, we need to keep up to date with the most recent and most important information, not propagandist crap, because any day now we'll be taken off of YouTube. So again, find us on Float. We have Bitcoin, we have Litecoin, we got Dash, we got Bitcoin Cash in the description, as well as donation ways to donate, and obviously STEEMIT and BitChute and all that kind of stuff. So make sure. What's that?
Not Monero?
I should have Monero in there. I do have a Monero address, but I can't do anything about that now. So yeah. Anyway, if you want to send me Monero, make sure to let me know. I'll send you an address.
Kingsley. So
yeah, that's right.
Kingsley and I will gladly take your Monero.
Well, hey, if you want to send me Monero, if you want to tip in Monero, just ask me and I will give you the address in the comments or of any of the comments of any of my videos. So let me know. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone joining us today. Tim Picciott has that camera so close to his face right now. It's scaring the F out of me. But yeah. So I really appreciate it. Hit that like button, share on social media, get this out there, because we are shadow banned. And anyway, we'll get back to you guys with much more on all this craziness as coronavirus, the economic collapse, global communist takeover happens, the apocalypse. It's a strange time to be alive, folks, but you know, time to work together more than ever. Stay safe out there. You know, keep your family close, and your enemies closer. No, actually, don't keep your enemies closer. It's not a good time for that. Anyway, I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you, Tim. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.